We'll just give it another minute or two to see if anyone else is able to join us. All right, I think we're going to get started. It is a couple of minutes after 9, and I want to make sure that we're respecting everyone's time. If you could give me a thumbs up or just come off mute and let me know you can hear me. Okay, see you. I think you said I can hear.
Yeah, we can hear. I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Susan. And I think Mark saw you respond when I asked that question. So I'm assuming you can hear as well. Oh,
yes,
there you are.
sorry, I forgot to unmute myself.
No worries, no worries. That's great.
That's a classic.
It's a Zoom one, isn't it?
For sure.
Well, welcome everyone to session 10 on keeping every lead. So we're going to get started. This session will not take 3 hours. I know we're scheduled for 3 hours. I'm going to, unless there's some conversation that takes us in a direction that is unanticipated at this point, it will not be a 3-hour Friday morning. I appreciate that everyone is at home and it is on a Friday. So we want to get all the information to you in a timely manner. What I do like to try to do is, with no one here, I'm turning so that I'm facing the computer rather than camera. So please come off mute if there are any questions or any comments that you have at any point, because I do want to try to keep it as interactive as possible. And as we all know, with it being on Zoom, that can be a bit of a challenge. We'll keep my eye on the chat as well, but if I miss something, please just come off mute again and ask. So with it being, so can you see my screen for session 10? Is that what you're seeing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yeah, we see it.
As long as you're not seeing me, but you're seeing the screen instead, that's perfect. Okay, so we're doing lead. We did lead generation last week for Wednesday, I think it was. And that really is one of the basis of our business. When we're trying to get leads, we turn leads into business and leads become profitable. have to get the lead before you actually can turn it into possibility, probability, and profitability. So that's the direction we're going to go today. Was anyone practicing any lead generating and able to find something, or do they know something that works really well for them? You can come off mute and just share that, or you can type it in the chat.
For now, for me, it's mostly a sphere of influence, but I've only been doing this for a couple of months. And I'm kind of surprised at actually how much business I am getting from the sphere. So I haven't done any other type of lead generation. My initial plan was to do door knocking in my neighborhood. But I've been busy enough at the moment now, I haven't even gotten to that. And I'm still learning the processes and the ropes. So, but I know that will come down the line.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Mark. And whereabouts are you located, Mark?
I am down in the Blue Rocks area, just outside Lunenburg.
Okay.
So my area is kind of a little bit of it's almost kind of like a peninsula on its own. So it encompasses Blue Rocks, Stonehurst, Heckman's Island, and Garden Lots.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Anyone else? What have you found has been working for you for generating leads? All kinds of things that I'm sure you went over in your last session. Wondering if anyone has found that there's one or two things that specifically work. Mark, that's great that your SOI is your main one right now, and that you're open to growing that.
Hi, this is Kelly here, and Colton's with me as well. But we normally, well, I do a lot of open houses personally, and I do some cold calling as well. Colton's big on door knocking, so he'll get me out doing that as well sometimes. So we'll kind of do a bit of everything for lead gen.
Okay. That's great. And do you find that one works better than the other in terms of your return on effort and time?
I find for me personally, I'm better on the phone than face to face because I can freeze up a bit when I see a real person. But what would you say for you?
I definitely say I had the most success door knocking. Just kind of studied that a little bit more and put more time into it. So, you know, and if you put more time into something, you're going to get good at it. So that's just how I do it. And I do a lot of the, I go to the gym regularly as well. So I meet a lot of people and it's a good face-to-face interaction. So, yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. So 3 different people so far have shared, and it's been 3 different ways of lead generating, which is the uniqueness of this business, which is awesome. It's so great. Does anyone else have anything that they'd like to add? No? Okay. So let's move on. There we go. So you've done your lead generation session. This morning, we're going to do the lead follow-up. So as you can see, we're going to try to do a couple of these to make sure that we are staying on track. So we're going to talk about keeping every lead. Those of you that have been in real estate for even a short amount of time, you've probably already heard the likelihood of a move is about every 7 to 10 years. But that tends to be the time that people start to think about moving, they start considering it. So how do you think that would impact your business? That if we know that that's a consistent cycle for a good portion of the population.
I guess you can expect like repeat business every 7 to 10 years. So if you sold somebody a house this year, you can expect kind of roughly in 7 to 10 years, they're going to be moving again. So, I guess the idea is to spread that out consistently so that you're getting repeat business consistently rather than in these like waves of feast and famine, feast, famine.
Right. Correct. Yes, and that's exactly the whole purpose of this course, is to try to figure out consistency. So we're not doing these waves and the roller coaster ride. So if we know the likelihood of a move is every 7 to 10 years, we wait 7 to 10 years to stay in contact with the base, our sphere of influence, the people that we've already sold into properties. Seems like it's not going to be as an effective, that it will be more effective if we stayed in touch with people and kept those relationships going. We do know there are some people that do run transactional businesses in real estate and do very well. A lot of people prefer to run it relationally based, to have their business building on those relationships. And when those relationships are solid, again, goes back to building the business, making sure the foundation is solid, then those relationships that you have those solid actions with are able to refer. So that will definitely help with your 7 to 10 year cycle as well. Well, the framework for lead follow-up is possible business, there's probable business, and then there's profitable business. Possible business is where we're going to start. If you aren't first or second in their mind, you're probably not going to get the business. And that's from the MREA. And that makes sense. We don't think of a store to go to, they're not going to get our business. If the advertising hasn't worked for us, or we haven't heard feedback or a positive experience from someone that we know, we will not think of that store. We will not go there if we're not driving by, or if it's out of our way. Oh, the fortune is in the follow-up. This is a really great way to consider it. And I'd like to spend a few minutes on this and hear what you think about it. So there's the leads that we have. The first one is called 19 to Connect. And this would be over a year. You would have 4 touches, which means you would have 4 quarterly calls. So you actually pick up the phone and speak human to human to somebody. That you would have 12 connections, monthly emails, newsletter, market report, or video promotion. And then you have 2 connections of promotional direct mail, such as magnet calendar, great thing to do at Christmas time, to market report, etc. 1 annual event or a get together. That equals 19 actions or touches per year. You know, through lots of research within real estate, that 1 high value touch solidifies the relationship you've just established, and it opens the door for future interactions. You need those interactions for a transaction. So this ends up being really important when it comes to leads. Yes, I would ask the question, if I gave you a lead and you perceived it to be a bad lead, what would you think of that? Would you just let it go? Would you blow up? How would you approach it?
Hey, Janice, it's James.
Hey, James.
Hey, I don't have my video on right now just because I'm doing a couple things in the kitchen, but it will be on shortly.
That's all right.
I've learned this business has just reinforced for me that you never know when things are going to happen. Everybody's on different timelines with different priorities, and things often happen unexpectedly. So it's always worth a follow-up, because you're not necessarily just chasing the business of that person, but also the referral of that person. So it's always important to follow up with people.
Yeah, exactly. And I would say that there is no such thing as bad lead, because it's up to you to have that conversation and to steer that conversation in the direction that it needs to go. Whether it is an initial call, or it's an initial connection, and you just stay in contact with that person. I've had people I've stayed in contact with, and 5 years later, they decide that they want to transact. It's a connection and just staying in touch and not forgetting about people. And people really appreciate that. They appreciate that you're remembering who they are and what they do for a job, if they have a significant other, if they have any kids or they have any pets. What was happening the last time you spoke to them or you messaged with them. So there is no such thing as a bad lead, only a bad lead if you decide you're not going to follow up with it and you're not going to do anything with it. Does that make sense to everyone? Or does anybody have anything to add to that?
I can share a quick story if that's okay.
Sure, absolutely. I love stories.
All right. Well, I will tell this for you then. I did an open house last winter, and I like to do a lot of open houses as well. And I kept in touch with some people that came through, and they were kind of like they weren't necessarily serious buyers at the moment, but they were looking, but not on a timeline, yada yada yada, et cetera, et cetera. So I was keeping in touch with them kind of in the background. And then all of a sudden one day they messaged me. It was a Saturday night and they said, "Hey, we went to an open house today. We love this house. Can you write an offer for us?" And it was very unexpected for me because I hadn't even sat down with these people and signed a BDBA. So but anyway, long story short, we ended up submitting the offer. And just to continue with the unexpected surprises, I didn't think their offer was going to be accepted, but it got accepted the next day. And so that turned into a transaction for me, and I had to do very little work for it. And again, of course, that's not necessarily the regular course of business, but again, you never know when things are going to happen. And it was just because I met these people at the open house and I was keeping in touch with them that they reached out to me after they went to see a house. And then I wrote the offer and it was accepted. So that's, an example of what we're talking about.
Exactly. It's a perfect example, James. Thank you for sharing that.
Yep, no
And
problem.
that reminds me of a couple. So I worked on a condo project in the South End on Wellington Street, Goresport Park. And when we were in the very early stages, there were 4 homes on that property where the condo buildings are now. And our sales center was in one of those buildings. And there was a couple that came in and they had previously had very negative experiences with a lot of people just in business, in real estate, in construction, and had often been taken advantage of. So initially when they came in, they were very guarded, arms crossed, like not wanting to make eye contact, very closed off. If they were there, I figured, well, came with the intention of wanting more information. So proceeded to have a conversation with them. Then they left. And I had gotten their phone number only. Followed up with them, just thanking them for coming. And never really heard anything from them. Followed up a few weeks later. They returned the call. Over the course of 2 years, that they invited me to their home to look at their home because they were considering, or do we buy a condo or not? And their home was in Armdale. So I popped over and had a great conversation with them. Again, a year goes by, but ends up that I listed their home, sold their home off market because of the location. They ended up referring 2 people to me and have had a family member who has passed that I've sold that home. And all of this business came from one follow-up phone call. Keeping that relationship going. It's a check-in with no pressure. It's a check-in just to say you're thinking about them. How is everything going? Just wanted to make sure you're okay. And their experience over time was that I was not in it for the dollar value. I was in it to build a relationship. And now kids all know them. Our kids have gone and helped them with things at their current spot. And it's amazing how some of those relationships will continue to grow, to build. So there is no bad lead, just always follow up and just to make sure you're adding them to your database. It's interesting in some of the research that's been collected that shows 73% buyers only talk to one agent. 82% of sellers only contact one agent, which is pretty high. It's a pretty high stat. So if you're the one that's staying in contact with them, your statistics having that relationship pretty solid, and them thinking about you as their first choice, they're pretty high. So with leads, we want 19 to connect, but with contacts over here, it says we want 36 to connect. So it's a little bit more. So once you have them as a contact from just a lead, then we would think about offering them something like a bi-weekly email that would tell them a little bit about their neighborhood, what's happening in their neighborhood, which is all helpful information, valuable information to somebody that's whether they're looking to buy or whether they're looking to sell within their neighborhood. So when you start thinking about lead follow-up programs, these are really great questions to ask. And if you wanted to jump in, just answer some of these, like, what are my strengths when working with people? What do you feel like is the first thing that comes to your mind?
I find I'm a good listener, and I tend to be not the first one who wants to jump up and speak, despite evidence to the contrary today. But I do usually prefer to sit back and let people talk and listen.
That's a dying art.
I don't believe you, Mark.
Honestly, I know that sounds, when I was saying it, I'm like, oh my God, none of them are going to believe me now. I'll be shutting up during the rest of this meeting.
No, please don't.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. And I'm only saying that because that's what people telling me. They're like, oh my God, you're listening so well.
So let's dig into that a little bit deeper, Mark. So when they say that, what has just happened to make them have that feeling that you've listened well?
Well, number one, I think because I'm not quick to want to speak. Like I'm not uncomfortable with some silences, and I like when people say something, I'll take a minute to kind of ponder it, and then usually I'll either come back by reiterating or paraphrasing what they've said, and then giving my idea or my opinion or whatever the situation requires at the time. Or another one that I do is I will like make mental notes of something they've said just in passing that maybe it would be like irrelevant to the situation at the time, but then I use it later on in the future for something. Like one example of a buyer that I'm working with now, we did a couple of showings and we started joking about saloon doors. He wanted to put saloon doors in a hallway and his wife was like, absolutely not. I can't believe you're doing that. And then it just jokingly became everything was going to be saloon doors everywhere. And then when we got a firm offer, I gave them a gift in a box, and the box had like saloon doors on it, and they loved it.
I bet they did. I bet they did. And then that becomes the connection, right? Because you've heard, you've listened, and you've heard. Pull it back through. So as you get busier, Mark, what do you think is going to be important for you to ensure that you are able to remember all of those things that clients and potential clients are sharing with you?
I mean, I'm diligent from the get-go, and I put everything in command. Under the notes section, I have like big paragraphs.
That's exactly what I was asking. That's awesome. Excellent. Anyone else? What are strengths when you're working with people? Well, what are some reasons that you may have for contacting a lead?
Holidays could be one, or like seasonal things that are going on. Or if you know that there's been a milestone in their life.
Yeah. Exactly. If you are connected with them on social media of any kind as well, if there's something that they've posted, then that's an easy one. Also, some people are wanting to keep their business and their personal very separate. So it might be on your business page that you see that they're following you and you're following them back and you're able to comment. So if you were to meet someone, let's use the most Canadian example, you're in the line at Tim Hortons and you meet someone and they're ahead of you. How would you have that conversation? 'Cause that's a very real thing. And it's easy to have conversations with people in lineups. Would you have that?
I don't have an answer to that question, but I'm very curious about where this is going to go, because this is something that I struggle with. Is I come across a lot of people, I meet a lot of people, I'm very involved in a lot of things, but taking the step in asking for referrals or asking for business, or even just, bringing up real estate, that's something that I need to work on. So I'm curious as to where this is going, but I don't have an answer.
Maybe I can jump in, James, and help you out a little bit. Since I heard you and I hear your pain. I do think this is getting harder and harder to do nowadays, because people are like, when they're in line, they're on their devices, either sneaking in a quick message or something, online. And so you kind of have to like make an effort to get their attention. So that's, I find a little bit, makes it more tricky these days. But I think, about letting people know that you're in real estate, it's amazing. So I recently got some door magnets for my car, and you wouldn't believe how many people at the gym who see my car parked out there have come up to me and said, "Oh my God, I had no idea you were in real estate. Like, I have a question," or it's amazing. So, and even like swag, like I'm not usually big into like, in your face swag, but just simple things like I bought a KW cap, and you'd be surprised how people come up and tell me like, "Oh, what's KW?" Because a lot of people don't know what KW stands for. So it's a good way to start conversation. So I'm actually ordering now some workout gear that will have like, again, subtly, KW Select on it, or whatever.
Yeah.
Because I think these are great conversation starters. And I know like some people have this idea, oh my God, they're kind of tacky. And I was kind of a little bit of that thought as well, but it actually works. Like it really does. Like the difference has been ginormous just from people recognizing that you're in real estate.
Yeah. And I love that, Mark, you've taken what is working for you and you're using it, and you're using it as leverage to be able to push some of those conversations forward, because they wouldn't happen if you didn't have those door magnets for your vehicle, or you didn't have the ball cap on with KW, and you're using those and pushing them forward through the conversation just to explain to people, and it opens a door. I'm sure, Colton, you've had this conversation lots when you're door knocking. That tends to be one where you're not even standing in a line, you're intentionally going up to someone's door. And how do you have that conversation with someone when you door knock?
Yeah, it's it depends on the person, right? It's it varies, and the neighborhood too. I've noticed like I
Interesting.
more bring in the curiosity. That's kind of my philosophy on getting people to open up to me rather than going up and just asking them to, when are you selling your home, right? It's a bit
Yeah.
different from that approach. Yeah.
How do you do that? What, without giving away your trade secret? There, what does the conversation look like?
So I kind of use so there's a lot of homes in the area that I go to that have
Mhm.
sold in the past, and I do a lot of data collection of like it's sold this much over the asking price, or sometimes I'll go up and give like market updates to them on a brochure, so it's like value to them.
Yep.
And if I'm working with buyers, I'll even go to that neighborhood and be like, hey, like I'm working with a buyer right now that's looking to live in this neighborhood within 6 months time frame. And I just wonder if you're, thinking about making a move in the future potentially. There's
Yeah.
different directions, of course, depending on the neighborhood, but yeah, it's a lot of studying, really.
Oh, it's good. But then you're able to take what you've been studying and put it into immediate action. It's usable information that people are able to, and they're often curious about, but may not want to ask.
Exactly. Yeah. And
Yeah.
yeah, I've been finding good results so far. They're not like instant, but if you can get in there and get an appointment, which I usually try to do at the door, then it's a
Mhm.
good way of, providing more value and getting them to trust you. And then over time, they'll sell with you. So that's,
And exactly. And so you're building on those leads. So your lead is you're picking them up door to door through your door knocking, building on that, and you're in it for the long haul. There's
Yeah.
very low percentage that's going to be immediate transaction.
Mhm. Exactly.
That's awesome. Anyone
Yeah.
else?
Sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say like Command, obviously it's a huge platform for the follow up.
Mhm.
So like if
Mm.
you can really use that to your advantage, it could really help with that following up with them, because a lot of people aren't instant 30 to 60 to 90 days. So they could be a year down the road. But if you don't, as we've seen before, personal touch them every month, or every couple months, then they'll forget you, so
Hmm.
that's a big thing.
Hmm. That's a great example. It's really good. Thank you. Have you had the experience when we're talking about conversations? Have you ever had anyone say, "Oh, you're in real estate, you must be so busy"? Often you hear a lot of realtors say, "Yes, it's so busy."
I've been one to ask that question myself before I was in real estate.
Yeah. It's interesting because I've listened to number of sessions on high production agents related to that conversation and related to that one line. "Oh, you're in real estate, you must be so busy." And what has been consistently found, if you answer yes, it's such a busy market, what they hear then is, "You're really busy, so I may take the business from you and give it to somebody else who's not quite so busy." So my caution to you is be very careful how you answer that question if you are very busy. Way to engage that part of the conversation is a very busy market. Depends on who you're working with and what price point. Let me tell you a little story. Talk about one of your current or one of your previous clients without giving away any information. It then humanizes it, helps them see who you are as a realtor and how you interact. And Mark, one of your key things, how you listen to people as they're going through the process, and moves the conversation from how busy you are to how you make human to human connections. All of a sudden, conversation has shifted. All you've done is told a story. Part of this job is dealing with people, making connections with people, and figuring out how do you communicate best? What is your strength? What are the ways that you're going to be able to take some of that and some of those conversations and leverage it? Because if I hear somebody is really busy, like, oh, I wonder if they'll be able to give attention that I need for whatever it might be. Is it going to be hard to get an appointment with them? Is it going to be difficult for them to set aside the time I'm going to need in the process? Will they have time to answer the questions? If you are able to pull in a little bit of a story, all of a sudden they're like, oh, that sounds amazing. That sounds great. And you're so excited when you share it.
Janice, what kind of story are you talking about sharing? Like an experience that you've had with a client or?
Yeah. So for example, if you said to me, are you really busy? Well, you're in real estate. It must be really busy. Well, really, my response would be, it depends on price point. It depends on where you're looking. It depends on what your time frame is. Let me tell you a story. I've been working with this sweet family
Yeah.
for over a year.
Hmm.
They have lost a number of homes because of the market, but they kept going, kept persevering. And even in the market and the price point that they were in, were able to secure. And last week we just closed a house for them.
Got
It
it.
is busy in some markets.
Mhm.
It is busy in some price points, but it's possible. It depends on what you're looking for. You know, someone that's
Right.
looking, maybe that has, and then you're able to flip it.
Yeah.
You're able to move it into the next phase of the conversation instead of it being awkward. They've given you the lead in, given you the open door to walk through.
Yeah, I like that strategy. That makes a lot of sense to me. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. To me, it doesn't sound salesy. I am not, I don't do well with high pressure sales. My wall automatically will go up. If somebody tries high pressure sales with me, I'm better with stories. I'm better with making connections, with having a conversation. And so, and what I've noticed is there's a large percentage of the population interact the same way, feel the same way. If you're able to take that and use any part of it, that would be helpful. Please feel free. Any other questions or comments about this part? So I would encourage you to take some time, go through these questions. The notes say about 10 to 15 minutes. But if you want to go through them just to understand yourself a little bit more and dig into that, understand what works and what doesn't work. Sometimes what doesn't work doesn't mean you shouldn't be doing it. Means you might need to figure out a different approach, or you might need to do some objection handling with someone else. You might need to do some script practicing. So don't think that if something's not working that you shouldn't do it anymore. To someone about it and just see if there's a way that you can tweak it. It's a way that maybe you can make it a little smoother or help it work for you. These are some examples of the 19 to connect. Different ways that you can use calls, texts, or conversations. The top one, I always have that conversation early on when I first reach out to someone, first reach out to a lead. One of the first questions I will ask them is, how do you prefer to communicate? Do you prefer phone calls, text, messaging, emails? What is your preferred method? I will adapt everything. It may change throughout the process. You may change that note that you have in command and on their file. But if you're adapting to what they need, they automatically hear you've listened and you're meeting their need, not your need. That certainly makes a big difference for people. Sometimes it depends on the age range, generation can make a big difference. You know, like if you, for example, my parents would never messaging. It would be phone calls. Just pick up the phone and call me. And then I had a client who was in his 20s, and he said, "Don't ever call me unless someone's dead." That's right. So you have the two extremes. So it is an important conversation to have. And then just the rest of them are pretty self-explanatory. Birthday cards, market reports, informative videos or emails, things that you're providing value. Events. Has anybody seen any unique events? This one's always a fun one if there's something that's a little bit different.
I mean, I've heard of lots of the usual stuff, like they'll host like parties, or they'll do like a kids' day at a park, and they'll bring like some bouncy castles. But I have an idea for my community starting next year. So just this past summer, they started, because it's a very artsy area where I live, there's tons of art studios.
Yeah.
And they organized like an art gallery, like hop, like almost like a bar hop, and people will take boats around the area and stop at the different art studios, and then hop on the boat, go to the next one, and so on. But this year, at the end of all of that, I want to host like a barbecue. So one of the last stops will be like people stop, and there'll be drinks and a barbecue, and I'll host that. Yeah, so that's kind of an event I'm thinking of doing.
That's a really unique community event. It's fun to be able to tag into that. It's a great idea, Mark.
Thank you. You're invited.
Hey, I'd love to come. You let me know when it is.
Definitely.
Anyone else have any other ideas that they've seen or heard? We know that like some people will do movie theaters, some people will host fall photos or Christmas photos, do different community events such as that. Also seen people drop off leaf picks with their logo or their name on it. Only works if you're in the city. If you're in the outskirts or outside the city where there's, you know, kilometer or two between properties, not doing leaf bags.
I've been looking into that recently, actually, Janice, because I heard somebody else talking about that. It's not, it's more expensive than I thought, so I may or may not do it. But for something like that, would you recommend making that a community giveaway kind of thing, or just like to your database? Like, is it really important to have something like that? If you're looking for the advertising, is it really important to have it consistent through the neighborhood, or is it more of an advantage to have it spread amongst different areas, do you think?
Sure. So anybody else can jump in on your thoughts on this. My thought on it is if you're doing it to blitz an area, then it would be a community or a subdivision. Because when all the leaf bags are full and at the end of the driveway, it's advertising, 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 advertising. All as people are driving down, they may call you and say, "Hey, I saw those leaf bags. Do you have any more leaf bags?" All of a sudden you've captured a lead.
Have you done that before yourself?
I have not. I've heard not so much in Halifax. I've heard that there's a couple of realtors doing it in Halifax, but I've not done it myself.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if anybody has like a lead on somewhere to go that's not super expensive, because like I said, I think it's a good idea, but it's not as budget conscious as I would like, especially if you're gonna put the
Yeah.
whole subdivision, like it gets pricey for sure.
It does for sure, depending on how many houses that you're doing.
I thought about maybe just doing my street after I saw the price of it. I thought, okay, instead of doing my whole area, I live in Portland Hills, maybe I'll just do my street just to start that. So maybe I'll do that. But yeah, that's something that I'm looking into. I feel like fall has a lot of opportunity for this kind of stuff.
It does. It does. There's another thing that I saw someone do. I have not done it, but after a couple of conversations this summer, like that might be something to look into. So I'll share it here. Is having a shredding company parked in the school parking lot on one weekend for documents. And because somebody shared with me, it was going to cost them between $400 and $600 shred 5 boxes, like regular small paper boxes of documents. So you would pay for it, you would blitz the area and let them know that on this day between this time and this time, you can come and shred or confidential documents or whatever documents it might be. So that I've heard in larger centers, people having great success with that one. I did not realize it was that expensive to shred items if you did not have a shredder at home. Just I agree with you, there's opportunity in being creative. You don't know if it's going to fail unless you try it. If you try it and you learn from it, it's not a fail. It's a building to the next step. So this is focusing on value and trying to make an impact. So what's your value proposition? How do you personally communicate and ensuring that you are having good personal communication with your leads that are to turn into contacts, and that you know your stats and your data. For potential lead sources, you could ask some of these questions. Why are you thinking about buying or selling? Which then leads to a lot of additional questions. You can say, tell me more. I would probably say, can you tell me a little bit more about that? And rather than tell me more. And then the next question is, what will that do for you and your family? How long do you see that taking? What would be the time frame that you would be working in? So you're able to have some of conversations just based on with these questions. And well, now is the time to mention, if you're doing cold calling, making sure that you're checking the do not call list. So post lead follow-up, this one is you capture your lead, you put it in your database, and just exactly this is just the chart for what we've been talking about. Making sure that you are building those leads into relationships. If you have strong relationships, they're the ones that are going to be your referral partners. And they are going to refer you people, even if they never have any intention of selling themselves. Sometimes those people are going to be your best advocates. I'll give you an example. I was just dropped into a friends for dinner over the summer, and their nephew and significant other were there. And I knew that they were both RCMP. And I had a friend who was looking to move to that area. I don't have a KW bridge in that area in Regina. So I asked them, when you were out there at Depot, did you ever do any buying and selling in real estate. Did you ever buy a property or did you just rent? No, we just rented. Okay, that's great. Do you know anyone that bought or sold? We actually do, and they were really happy with their realtor. So can you reach out to them and get the contact in? My friend was overhearing all of this at the same time. And so I got a referral out of it from that contact. Now have a contact in Regina. And my friend referred another cousin who's selling a property here in the city, and then reached out about a friend who is selling on PEI, and did I know a realtor on PEI? So out of that conversation, there were 3 things that came. Have those conversations. It's intentional about making sure that you're building relationships, but that they're seeing you want to get somebody who is solid referral partner that you're wanting to interview, like just to have those conversations. And all of a sudden, there were 3 things that came out of that one chat with that couple, which was amazing. It just showed that the follow-up is huge. Have those conversations and then follow up. The conversations and then follow up. It just becomes part of your natural rhythm in the business, trying to make connections, trying to have connections right across the country and right across the globe. That will help to build your business as well. Again, a high value touch that solidifies the relationship you've just established and opens the door for future interactions. Me, that conversation at that dinner would have been a very high value touch. Even though they may never transact with me, they have no intention of moving from where they are. Connections and the referrals that they were able to already give me was huge. Then the follow-up with leads. Effort you give to converting leads must match the effort you give to generating them. So again, it's capturing, connecting, cultivating, and closing. Sometimes, like we talked about, it takes a long time to close one, a long time to bring it from a single conversation to a transaction. If you're not focusing on dollar amount, and you're not focusing on the paycheck, you're focusing on the relationship, we'll build it more solidly. We'll build it with longer term value. Possible, probable, and profitable business. So this collecting in the minimum amount of valid information for potential buyer and seller. Kelly, do you find that it's hard to capture that information at open houses? Do you have pretty good success with that?
It's hit or miss, but it's interesting when I feel like I'm openly asking people to leave their contact information, they typically don't. But if I have a sign-in sheet there with a pen and somebody's already signed up and I have the information right beside it and maybe some like treats laid out there, then they kind of get the idea and write their name without me even having to ask, which is kind of nice. And then I don't feel like I'm pushing them either. So.
Oh, interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, no, definitely.
You just kind of set the stage without trying to capture it.
I
like a no pressure thing.
Oh, sorry, Kelly, didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to elaborate on what you were saying and what I started doing actually very recently, the last open house I did, because I was having trouble capturing that as well. Because like you're saying, when you ask people, I think they get the idea that you're going to be following up and maybe sending them things that they don't want, whatever. So, I mean, I've always said, you know, the seller would like to know who's been through the house, first of all, to kind of set it up and make people think, okay, that makes sense. It's somebody's house. They want to know who's been through. So I do say that. And what I've started doing is cheating a little bit and actually putting a couple fake names with fake information at the top of the list so that it looks like people have come in and that they've been following the rule, and that tends to make people a little more willing to share. So, you know, I'm not being completely transparent with them, but at least when they see other names on the list, I think it makes people think, okay, other people have been doing it, I'll do it as well.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's a great point. And another thing too is, like you said, I kind of like to, save some of the information about the house for if they do put their name down, then I can be like, if you give me your email or your phone, either or both, whatever you're comfortable with, then I'll send along, the power bill, the tax bill, and any other information that you want about the house. And then that way they kind of know that I will be contacting them, and also with something that they're interested in finding out about, right? So that can help too.
That's a great approach, Kelly. It's a really great way to do it. During COVID, not that we did a lot of open houses, but people were very willing to give their contact info because we needed to for tracking and tracing for exposure sites and such. So part of me feels like people are still willing, just the stage has to be set for it not to feel like you're trying to capture it and then you're going to blitz them with a whole bunch of information. What do you find once you do have that contact information, whether it's an email or a phone number? What do you find the response is with that? Do they respond? Do they answer the phone?
I get email responses a lot. A lot of the time it's just saying that they weren't interested, but it still opened up the communication. So even if, it's not necessarily about selling that house to that person, it's
Right.
opening the conversation. So that's the main thing. I mean, any response is a good response, really, because they're showing the willingness to kind of communicate with you at least, and it kind of opens the door to kind of shift the conversation from the house that you met them in into a more general house hunting conversation.
That's great. What else? Have anything that they wanted to add to that? So if you weren't capturing leads from open houses, for sale, sign calls, social media, where else could you get some of those lead captures? Where else could you get leads from? Mark, you already mentioned it early on, that you were working with your
Sphere of influence.
Yep.
Yeah, and then most of the time you already have like the minimum like contact information, and because they know you and stuff, even if you don't necessarily have their number or email, if you ask for it, it's not such a it's not a humongous ask, like, because they already know you and trust you and hopefully like you.
hopefully, if they're in your SOI, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But you can also, you can also leverage them to help you. If you're looking in a specific area, do you know someone? Because people will hear the street gossip or the local community gossip of, oh, so-and-so is thinking about selling, or they're listing their house. So you can engage a lot of your SOI in communities, help you, and which will help your clients. So those can be ways that you can also get some additional leads. You know, if you know anyone, let me know how I can help them. And there will be a handful of your sphere of influence who will be some of your greatest supporters and who will actually refer to you.
I
It's
find it
incredible.
special. Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. Go for it.
No, I was gonna say, especially in small communities like my communities here, like,
Mhm.
it's kind of a little bit old school Nova Scotia, and they love to gossip. So sometimes you just run into people on the street, and yeah, they'll tell you, oh, I just heard this person's selling, or, this person, just one is downsizing, or so that is generally how people communicate here too. It's mostly, I mean, I use gossip sort of in a positive way, like they're just sharing community news.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is I found like probably much more so than in large cities where people are a little bit more anonymous. People don't really know their neighbors, or
Well, and you're bang on with that, Mark, because it depends on the area that you're in, it's in the community that you're in, and how all of that works and how some of those conversations work. So leverage that. Really take advantage of that when you know that there's something happening. You're able to move forward with it and jump into those conversations and not just shy back from them. So a couple of conversation starters that they have. If I were to need to contact you, what number would that be? If I found exactly what you're looking for, how would I contact you? That's often a great question at open houses. This might not be the home for you, but if I did come across or I did hear of a house that is exactly what you're looking for, what's the best way to contact you? It feels less, know if invasive is the right word, than saying, can you give me your email address or give me your phone number and trying to ask for it that way. Sometimes it's just pulling it into part of the conversation.
and it comes more from a place of I'm gonna help you. Like there's some
Yes.
value in it for you, as opposed to give me your email. So then it's about me.
Yep, exactly. Exactly. Always come from a place of contribution, how you can be helping people. And that's and it for three is what you were saying, Kelly. Like if I found, wanting to share that information, how would I get it to you? Wanting to be able to pass on that information. So then what we talked about your value proposition, knowing what your strengths are, role playing and practice conversations are huge. So if you don't have someone to do that with, I would strongly suggest that you reach out to someone and start doing that, whether it's once a week or every morning for 10 minutes. It certainly helps some of those conversation objections and the flow of conversation to become more natural, and you figure out what your approach is and how you are going to word some of the questions and the responses. Then there's questions, the 6 connections questions, and I think we all learned this in elementary school: who, what, where, when, why, and how. And trying to make sure that we're connecting with people. These questions are important to ask to be able to understand who we're connecting with, how we can help them. So who are they? What do they need or want? Where do they want or need to do it? Why do they want or need to do it? When do they want, need, or do it? And how do they plan to do it? So if you start conversation and just getting a little bit of that information, it leads to the next conversation. Sometimes all of this will not happen. The majority of times, all of this will not happen your first interaction with someone. You can take 1 or 2 of these questions, see where they go, and then be able to follow up. Make notes that you're not asking the same questions all the time. make notes on what their answers are, and then be able to build that relationship from there. Can't know or predict when they will come to a decision, but if you're reconnecting with them in a systematic way, you'll have a great chance of being there when they do. That's when you'll be able to close for the appointment. Whether the appointment is on, like it happened to you, James, and you had kept in contact with them, but they weren't ready until they went to an open house. You had no idea. Then that's your close for the appointment. It's writing a deal. Like sometimes things vary and they look different from client to client and connection to connection. It's trying to make sure that you're doing it consistently for what becomes a natural flow for you and in your business. When you do that, you're just able to build on each of those blocks and each of those relationships. Then if you are asking for an appointment, does you know what we had talked about, which format is most effective, texting, email, phone call, or in person. So it says, what do you think is the most effective one in asking for the appointment? We kind of had that conversation, but if you were to answer that, what would you say?
Doesn't it just depend on the person you're talking to? Like some people might prefer to do it by text, or you may prefer to do it by text, like some by email, some in person.
Yeah, I agree with you. I really think that we are trying to communicate with a new client, a new lead or connection. We're trying to adapt for what their needs are and to find out more about them. Part of that is what is most effective for them. What is their preferred method of communication? And if can meet and have good enough reasons to meet, they will meet. If they don't, they won't. And that's okay. Really don't care what their answer is ultimately, because you're not getting people to do anything they don't want to do. They're just going to ask and respond until they agree to meeting with you makes sense. If it doesn't. Either way, you both win. So it goes, if you haven't read that book, it's a great book. Shift. It's a great book to read in this market that we're in. We did a book club on this, say 2 years ago now. Great conversation with it, but it has a lot of really helpful information, really helpful ways of thinking about things and our individual businesses when we're looking at a market that is the middle of a shift. Because I'm sure all of you are seeing, depending on the price point you're in, depending on the location, depending on if it's buyers or sellers, if it's vacant land or condos or new construction or resale properties, will determine how active and busy the market is. There is no across the board answer to that question. If you do, I would recommend that you would read this book because it does give some really good perspective. Any questions or comments?
I mean, for me, I find it exciting to know that there's many ways to get to where you want to get. There's no like one specific right way. It just, you have so many options and you have to work with what works for you and your market.
100%. And I love when people share what works for them and what their business is based on. Like for Kelly and Colton, they're do similar but different things. And it works for them. For me, mine is 85% referral and repeat business, sphere of influence. And for other people, it's all cold calling. For someone else, it's for somebody else, it'll be all social media. And it works.
Janice, I do have a question.
Sure.
Something that I'm realizing more and more is that it seems like everybody knows a real estate agent in their life somehow, has some connection to one. So if you're speaking with somebody, and maybe mention you're in real estate or having a conversation about real estate, no matter how casual it is, if somebody does
Yep.
mention that they have a realtor, they've worked with a realtor, they know a realtor, does that shift the way that you communicate with them in the future, or do you treat it just like anybody else who hasn't told you that they have a and I'm not talking about being in contract with the realtor. I'm talking about
Right.
just knowing somebody that they've used in the past or that they may think that they're going to use in the future. Is that something you tread lightly with, or do you just kind of keep in touch with them the same way you would with anybody else?
My immediate question after somebody says, oh yeah, my friend or my aunt or my cousin or my cousin's brother's sister's wife, whatever it would be, right? Like, you know how far out sometimes that goes. My immediate question is, oh, that's amazing. Who are they?
Mhm.
And when they answer, I will be honest and I'll say, oh, I've never actually worked with them. Or if I have, they say, oh, that was such a great experience. They are a really great person. And that leads to the next part of the conversation. They say, yeah, family member, I don't know if I'd use them or not. Right? Like, so it opens a door. They've started that part of the conversation. It opens a door for you getting a bit of a gauge on where that relationship is. If they are not transacting with them, you are well able to stay in contact with them.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
A long answer for that one. But it is part of the natural progression of that conversation for me.
But you don't let that discourage might not be the right word, but you don't necessarily
Let it
keep in
deter
touch with
me
them
from
less.
continuing on.
Like you still add them in your database, you still
Yeah.
are doing the touches with them. Yeah, okay.
Still send them a Christmas card with my calendar. Some
Yeah.
houses I go into, and you may have seen this, you'll go into and you see their fridge and they'll have 4 or 6 calendars from all different realtors.
Yeah, I know I do actually on my fridge too, so I'm cheating on myself.
Yeah, so I think it's respecting if they have an existing relationship. If it's not, then you are fine to check, and they will let you know if they don't want to hear from you. People often feel very comfortable with that, and they'll be very kind for the most part. And if that relationship doesn't work, that's fine. You've tried. It's not. What you don't want to do is make assumptions that are your assumptions, not somebody else. Remember somebody once saying, because I was early on, I was like, oh, I don't want to call them because I'm going to annoy them and they're not going to want to hear from me. And there was somebody that looked at me. I think it was in a bold course I was in. And they said, do you honestly think they wake up every morning and say, first thought is, hope Janice doesn't call me today? Oh, I don't want to hear from her.
Hopefully not. Yikes.
Right? But it all of a sudden, it changed the perspective for me of, right, they reached out to me, or they came to my open house, or they're the ones that started this conversation. I am just walking down the road, an interaction that I had with them. We're continuing to build and grow. When you make those phone calls, or you make that connection, or you send that message, people, the majority of time, are so happy to hear from you, and they're excited to hear from you. So just keep those relationships up. those interactions going. You guys do the Y4C2Ts in any of them? In any of your sessions? The win-win, no deal, integrity, trustworthy.
I think we kind of briefly touched over it because this year I think they're condensing Ignite from 20.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, I think they just glossed over it maybe in the first session. I do remember seeing the slide, but
Okay, so it is something just to keep in mind when you're doing this. It's that they are a backbone of KW and of the culture here. And we just want to make sure all our interactions, all of our communications, all of what we're offering falls within the Y4C2Ts. It really is the belief system of KW. So improve your conversion rate. I think some of this we're going to already have talked about for after 10. So we want to make sure that, you're doing your capture, you're connecting, you're cultivating, and then you're closing. You're not going to close unless you actually ask for those actions, right? Like you want to let me know when we can meet. Are you available on Wednesday at 4 or Thursday at 10? Like, do mornings or evenings work better for you? You need to be the one that's going to ask the question the majority of the time. Be able to get that follow-up appointment or even the initial appointment. Well, the growth comes from clarity, priorities, and focusing on action. Again, this is from the Shift book. The leads, you have the right to have a conversation. Contacts, you have engaged in a two-way conversation, and its value-based relationship has been established. And we've talking about that, how to get that established. What are some ideas? So focus on building relationships and take market share. So today's conversation is tomorrow's transaction. We all know that we don't work on a bi-weekly pay schedule. We don't get paid every 2 weeks. Get paid often after we've put a lot of work and effort into building these relationships. Not that any of us complain about that or wish it was any different. The relationships that we build will build our business for down the road. You meet your new contacts, you either business with them immediately or you don't. Either way, once you've met them, you put them in your database and stay in touch with them forever. And then again, that goes back to the cycle, 7 to 10 years. If you're staying in touch with them, at that 7 to 10 year mark, even maybe 5 years, right? Their family has grown, or their family has moved out, or there's a separation, or there's a death, or you are aware as they're moving through these different seasons in their life. And all of a sudden you're not jumping on something. Please don't ever be someone that someone has passed or someone has gone into care and you're immediately jumping on that. You have an established relationship with them, you can do a care call. Do you call to try to get business based on a very difficult situation? Will probably say more about you than you want it to in terms of what your business models are. Convert contacts to close business, stay top of mind. Here again is the graphic for 71% of sellers will interview or connect with one agent, and with buyers, it's even higher than. So leverage mind share or referral business. Again, follow up with people that you have transacted with, whether they're buyers or sellers, and that you are staying in touch with them. Communicate with your database. We've been through that. there's any part of this, please make sure you're stopping me that you want. I just don't want to. I don't want to review things and beat a dead horse, so to speak.
I'll jump in with another question here. Do you use smart plans?
On some people, I do.
Okay, because I know I know that that's a great tool that we have access to. I don't know a lot about it, but as I'm, growing my database, it's something that I'm looking more into. So that might be another topic for another time, but I was just kind of curious.
Yeah, and that you can search in smart plans. People have shared their smart plans right across. There's a lot of them in the States who use smart plans. They've shared their smart plans. So if you're looking for a really specific thing, then you can take that and you can modify it for what you're looking for as well. There was one that really liked how they did their follow-up with social media. So if you're advertising through Meta, through Command, you get a response or you capture your contact information. Sometimes it's hard to know how to follow up on that if they don't respond the first time. So I really liked how this team was responding. And I'm happy to share that with the group if anybody wants it. I can email you the link for that smart plan. In essence, it was, hey, this is the team. We see that you saw the listing. We're just following up to see if you have any questions about it. We'd love to reach out and set up a time to talk. Then they try to call a couple of days later, and then they try another email. And then I think it's 7 or 10 days later, they send another message. Hi, it's Janice with Haven Realty Group. We recognize that people are busy. Sometimes emails get pushed down to the bottom and we forget to respond, blah, blah, blah. And then the final one would be, we're just doing one last check-in. Don't want to bother you if you're not interested. We're making the assumption since we haven't heard from you. So it's all very not pressure tactic. So that was one that I found that I really liked. There's other ones with automatic send outs. There's ones with just birthday reminders. There's ones with home anniversary reminders. So there's some great resources there, James, for it. So crafting your message is figuring out what sounds natural and flows for you, using those 6 connection questions of who, what, where, when, why, and how, and using the make offer for immediate response. And so whether that's that Kelly does, would love to be able to send you some additional information. What's the best way to reach you? It's an immediate offer for an immediate response. So figuring out what works for you. Develop your personal touch plan. If you wanted to take some time after the session to be able to do that, then we get into smart plans. So that was a perfect lead in, James.
It's like he's done this course before.
I know.
This was honestly an authentic question.
I
So
believe
one thing,
I do.
One thing that I've done actually is I send myself bi-weekly neighborhood nurture. Because I wanted to see what it actually looked like, and I wanted to see how I received it in an email and what all my clients were going to be receiving, so that you honestly know. And if you want to tweak any part of it or you don't like any part of it, then you can customize it yourself, which is what I love about this program, because there is the cookie cutter ones that are already set up and established. You can personalize it for anything. You can personalize it for your specific area or your specific personality or So if you're looking at all healthcare workers, if you're looking at pet owners, if you're looking at, so you can really customize some of these things. You can do seasonal things. Yeah, you can send out all kinds of smart plans. I think Bess did a session on our YouTube channel on smart plans. There's a couple of them. And if you want additional information, then you'd be able to reach out to the marketing company that we have, and they can help you get some of that set up. Also, if you go on to Command and KWU, you can also watch all kinds of videos on how to set them up, how to get started. My recommendation would be sending them to yourself first, see what they look like. And that is it.
Wow, thank you very much, Janice. That's awesome.
It's always shorter when people are not in the classroom for some reason. Yeah, please, if you have any questions or any anything that you want to talk through, please reach out. I know anybody that's doing these sessions would be happy to have any conversation or assist in any way we can.
Thank you.
Thank you, Janice.
You're
Thank you very
welcome.
much.
Jane, I'm looking forward to meeting you on Monday night at the dinner.
On Monday. I'm so excited for it.
Me too. The numbers just keep growing.
I know.
They're gonna
That's a
hate
good thing.
us. All right. Have a
Everyone
good
have a
weekend, everybody.
wonderful, yes, have a wonderful weekend. And I'm looking forward to meeting those that I haven't met yet in person.
Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you.
guys.